Mary stood outside the glass doors of the tall, shiny bank building. The sun reflected off the windows, and the name of the bank was written in gold letters above her. She took a deep breath and looked down at the folder in her hands. Inside were her business documents, papers she had worked on for weeks. Today, she was going to open a business account. She was nervous, but also proud. She had come a long way to reach this moment. Wearing a clean but simple dress and flat shoes, Marie didn't look like the bank's usual customers. She didn't have expensive jewelry, high heels, or a designer handbag. But she had something more powerful, a dream, and the courage to follow it. She pushed the doors open and walked into the bank. The floor was white marble, and everything smelled of fresh flowers and money. Men in suits and women in fancy clothes moved around the place. The air felt cold, not just because of the air conditioning, but also because of the way people looked at her. Marie walked toward the customer service desk. There were 3 bank employees standing behind it. All of them wore matching uniforms. One of them, a young white woman with straight blonde hair, looked up. Her name tag read Jessica. She didn't smile. Marie smiled politely and said, "Hi, I'm here to open a business account." Jessica raised an eyebrow and looked Marie up and down. Her eyes slowly scanned Marie's clothes, her shoes, and her old leather folder. Then Jessica laughed quietly to herself and said loudly, "Are you lost?" The other 2 employees looked over and smirked. One of them whispered something to the other, and they both laughed too. People in the bank turned to look. Marie could feel all the eyes on her. Her heart beat faster. "I'm not lost," Marie replied softly, still trying to keep her calm. "I'm here to open a business account. I've brought everything I need." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Right," she said, dragging the word. "Well, we're a high-value banking service. We don't handle small things here. You might want to try a local branch downtown." Marie's hands gripped the folder tighter. She felt a wave of heat rush to her face. The sting of shame hit her chest like a brick. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She stood there for a few seconds in silence. The whole room seemed frozen. Then, slowly and with grace, she closed her folder, nodded her head once, and turned to walk away. Jessica said one last thing behind her back, just loud enough for her to hear. "What a joke." Marie kept walking. She didn't look back. Outside, the sun still shined. The city moved on around her. She stood at the edge of the sidewalk, taking slow breaths. Her heart still felt heavy, but her mind was clear. She sat down on a bench nearby and opened her folder again. The documents were all in place: business registration, tax forms, her business plan, and letters from clients who were ready to support her. Everything was ready. She had done everything right. So why did they treat her like that? Because she was dressed simply. Because she was black. Because she didn't look rich. She thought about walking back in and shouting at them. She thought about tearing the papers up and giving up. But then a small voice in her head whispered, "Not now. Not like this. Your time will come." Marie smiled to herself, a sad but strong smile. "They don't know who I am," she said quietly. And she stood up. She walked away from the bank building, not with defeat, but with quiet fire in her steps. What they didn't know was this: Marie had a dream bigger than their judgment. She had the heart to build something great. She had the power to turn pain into purpose. And one day, she would walk back into that same bank, not as a customer looking for help, but as someone they would need. But for now, she walked forward, holding her folder close and her dreams even closer. Marie didn't come from money. She didn't grow up with big dreams handed to her on a silver plate. Instead, her life began in a small, crowded apartment on the rough side of the city. Her mother, Patricia, worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses during the day and waiting tables at night. Marie rarely saw her, but when she did, her mother's words were always the same: "Keep your head high. Don't let the world tell you who you are." Marie never forgot those words. As a little girl, She would sit by the window, watching other children play outside. She wanted to join them, but she stayed inside to read old books from the library her mother brought home. School was her safe place. Even when she had holes in her shoes and no lunch money, she sat in the front row and raised her hand in every class. Her teachers noticed. One of them, Mrs. Blake, gave her extra lessons after school. Marie learned quickly. She was smart, curious, and full of questions. But life outside school was hard. She worked her first job at age 14, cleaning a small diner after school. At 16, she worked weekends at a hair salon, sweeping floors. Every dollar she made went into a glass jar under her bed. She called it her freedom jar. When she graduated high school, she didn't have money for college, but she didn't give up. She took online classes while working full-time at a local clinic. She learned about health, wellness, and business. She became interested in how people could feel better, not just with medicine, but with care, respect, and dignity. That's when her dream was born. She wanted to open her own wellness clinic, a place where people from poor areas, like the one she grew up in, could get real help. Not just medicine, but kindness, good food advice, mental support, and someone who listened. She knew it wouldn't be easy. She had no family connections, no rich investors, and no safety net. Just her jar of savings, her quiet strength, and a business plan she typed on an old laptop in her kitchen. She spent months perfecting that plan. She read books, watched videos, joined free webinars, and asked questions to anyone who would answer. She even volunteered at wellness events just to learn how real clinics worked. By the time she walked into that bank, she wasn't just a woman with papers. She was a woman with purpose. But they didn't see that. They saw her skin, her clothes, her quiet voice, and they judged her. They thought she didn't belong. But Marie had seen worse. She had been through nights with no food, days with no power, and weeks with no rest. This was just another test. She didn't cry when she left that bank. But that night, she sat on her bed, staring at her folder. The pain of that moment stayed with her. The shame, the laughter, the way Jessica looked at her like she was nothing. But she remembered her mother's words again. Keep your head high. Don't let the world tell you who you are. She whispered to herself, I know who I am. I know what I'm building. One day, they'll know too. That night, Marie made a decision. She wasn't going to fight for a seat at someone else's table. She was going to build her own. She wrote emails to small business advisors. She applied for grants. She visited smaller, friendlier banks. She pitched her idea to community leaders. Some said no. Some didn't reply. But one man, Mr. Alvarez, an older gentleman who once ran a health company, replied with just one sentence. Let's talk about your vision. That meeting would change her life. Marie met Mr. Alvarez at a small cafe near the city park. He wore a warm smile and a simple gray suit. He had a kind face and eyes that had seen many years of work, failure, and success. He listened carefully as Marie shared her dream. She didn't try to impress him with fancy words or big promises. She just spoke from the heart about her childhood, her community, and her wish to help people live better lives. When she finished, Mr. Alvarez didn't speak right away. He looked at her folder, then looked at her. Marie, he said, you remind me of someone I used to be. You've got fire in you, but more than that, you've got focus. Marie blinked, unsure what to say. He smiled and continued, I'm going to help you. Not with money, but with something better. Guidance. From that day on, Marie worked closely with Mr. Alvarez. He taught her how to refine her business plan, how to pitch to people who had power, and how to grow slowly but smartly. He showed her where to apply for small business support and introduced her to people who believed in helping others rise. But Marie didn't stop there. She used every free hour she had to move her dream forward. During the day, she worked her clinic job. At night, she studied, made phone calls, answered emails, and visited possible locations, On weekends, she handed out flyers for free wellness advice in local parks, building trust with the community. She didn't have an office yet, so she turned her tiny living room into a mini clinic. She bought second-hand equipment, used old shelves as storage, and invited neighbors to come in for free health talks. Word spread. People started showing up. They came for help with food planning, stress, back pain, or just to talk. Many of them couldn't afford to go to real clinics, but Marie welcomed everyone with the same gentle words. You matter. Let's see how we can help. The walls of her living room were filled with thank you notes, handmade drawings from kids, and photos of smiling faces. Her dream was still small, but it was real. She called it Rooted Wellness because she believed true healing started from the roots. Food, thoughts, kindness, and care. Slowly, donations began to come in. A local store offered to sponsor healthy snacks. A teacher offered to run free mental health sessions. A retired nurse helped her with basic checkups. Every small win added to something bigger. Mary didn't post about it. She didn't chase attention. She worked quietly, building something that mattered. But even with her growing success, she never forgot that day at the bank. The pain of that moment stayed with her, but so did the strength it gave her. One evening, after cleaning up from a long day, she found an old envelope tucked behind her folder. It was the bank's flyer. The same bank that had laughed at her. She stared at it for a while. And then, with a slow smile, she folded it in half and placed it back in the folder, not as a wound, but as a reminder. One day, she whispered, I'll walk back in, not to ask for a seat, but to offer one. Outside, the city lights glowed. Inside her heart, something brighter burned. Mary was no longer waiting for someone to open a door. She was building her own. 2 years had passed since Marie was laughed out of the bank. 2 long years of working, learning, saving, and helping people in her small apartment clinic. Now, her living room was too small. Her hallway was filled with chairs. Strangers waited outside her building, hoping for a chance to speak with her. She knew it was time for something bigger. With Mr. Alvarez's help, Marie found a small, empty building in the heart of her old neighborhood. It was dusty, broken, and forgotten, just like she had once felt. But Marie saw something else. She saw hope. She stood in the middle of the broken space, smiling. This, she whispered, will be home. The community came to help. Friends painted the walls. Kids from the block cleaned the yard. Local artists painted murals of trees, hearts, and bright colors. A carpenter donated shelves. A group of volunteers built her a small welcome desk. People brought what they could. Not money, but time, hands, and love. And when it opened, Rooted Wellness was no longer just a dream. It was a real, living place, with open doors, warm smiles, and honest care. Inside, there were 3 simple rooms, one for health talks, one for basic checkups, and one for mental wellness. There were no expensive machines or fancy chairs, but the feeling inside was peaceful, like the world slowed down when you entered. Mary stood by the door every morning, greeting each visitor with a smile and a soft voice. Welcome. How can we help you today? She had no uniform, just a neat dress, simple shoes, and calm eyes. People came with pain in their hearts and left with light in their faces. Rooted Wellness became a quiet miracle. One by one, small newspapers began to notice. Then a health magazine wrote an article titled, "One Woman's Clinic is Healing More Than Just Bodies." Soon after, a famous local radio station called her for an interview. Mary was nervous. She had never spoken on live radio before, but she sat at the microphone, took a deep breath, and told her story. Not about the bank, not about revenge, but about her mother, her community, and the power of small dreams with deep roots. That interview reached thousands. Donations grew. A retired doctor offered to volunteer 3 times a week. A food company donated healthy snacks for kids. A nonprofit gave her a grant to expand her space. Her face began to appear on community posters. People began to call her the woman with the healing hands. But Marie stayed the same. She still swept the floors. She still listened more than she spoke. She still ended every visit with the same soft words. You matter. We're here for you. And then, one quiet afternoon, something unexpected happened. Marie received a letter. It was from the same bank, the same branch, the same building. The letter was formal. It was an invitation to a Women in Business panel, asking her to speak about leadership, courage, and success. The event was hosted by the bank itself. Her name was printed in bold. Marie held the paper in her hands, silent. She read it twice. Then she looked at the envelope again and noticed the sender's name at the bottom. Jessica, the same woman who once asked if she was lost. Marie didn't feel anger. She felt something stronger, peace. She folded the letter, placed it in her drawer, and walked to the window. Outside, children were playing near her clinic's garden. A mother waved at her. A young man walked by holding a flyer from Rooted Wellness. Marie smiled to herself. I didn't wait for someone to open a door for me, she whispered. I opened my own and made sure others could walk through too. But she wasn't done yet. Her next move would shake the very floor of the bank that once laughed at her. And this time, the world would be watching. The day of the panel had arrived. Marie stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her simple blue blazer. It wasn't designer, but it was clean, sharp, and carried meaning. She didn't wear gold or diamonds, just a silver necklace her mother had given her before she passed away. It had one word on it: grace. Marie looked at herself. The same eyes, the same skin, the same heart. But she was no longer the woman who had been laughed at in that bank. She was a leader now, a builder, a healer, a quiet storm that had changed her world, without shouting, without revenge. As her car pulled up to the bank, Marie felt something heavy inside her chest. Not fear, not anger, just memory. The large glass doors opened with a soft chime. It was the same bank, the same clean floors, the same cold lighting, the same front desk, but everything felt different now. The moment she stepped inside, people turned to look. Some smiled politely, others watched with quiet curiosity. They had no idea who she was, or what story she carried inside her. Then she saw her. Jessica, still working at the front desk, still dressed sharp, still wearing that confident smirk, but it faded the moment her eyes met Marie's. Jessica stood frozen, her mouth slightly open. It was like a ghost from the past had walked in, but this ghost had grown wings. Marie didn't blink. She gave a gentle smile and walked past without a word. In the conference room, the energy was different. People shook her hand. A banker complimented her radio interview. A woman from a city agency said she had visited Rooted Wellness and was deeply moved. Marie listened, nodded, and thanked them with grace. Then came the panel. 4 women sat at the front: business owners, lawyers, speakers. And in the center sat Marie, calm, kind, and quietly powerful. The host began the talk. Each woman shared her story. Then it was Marie's turn. She stood, looked around the room, and took a breath. I'm not here today because I had the perfect business plan, she said softly. I'm here because I didn't give up, even when I was made to feel small. The room went quiet. I walked into this very bank 2 years ago, she continued, with dreams in my heart and papers in my hand. I wasn't dressed fancy. I didn't speak big words, but I came here to open something that would help people. She paused, but I was met with laughter, with judgment, and silence. People shifted in their seats. Some looked down. Jessica, who was standing at the back of the room, turned pale. Marie smiled gently. But I'm thankful for that moment, she said, because it taught me who I was, and more importantly, who I could become. She looked around the room, her voice steady. Today, I run a wellness center that serves hundreds, not because I had money, but because I had a mission. I didn't need a door opened for me. I built one. And now I keep it open for others." The room burst into applause. But Marie didn't raise her voice. She didn't boast. She simply sat down and folded her hands in her lap, peaceful. After the event, people lined up to speak with her. One woman whispered, "You inspired me." Another said, "I want to help at your clinic." Even a bank manager asked to meet privately. But the most surprising moment came when Jessica walked up. Her voice was quiet. "Mary, I remember you. I'm sorry. I judged you. I never imagined." Marie looked at her, calm. "I know," she said softly. Jessica blinked. "You're amazing. Truly." Marie smiled gently. "Thank you. I hope you treat the next woman better." Jessica nodded, eyes full of emotion. "I will." Marie turned and walked out of the bank, not with revenge, not with pride, but with something stronger. Peace. Outside, the sun was shining. Marie looked up, closed her eyes, and smiled. She had returned, not as the broken one, but as the builder. Not to take a seat, but to offer one. And this was only the beginning. After the bank event, Marie's story began to spread faster than ever. People from other cities called her. Students emailed her, asking for advice. Mothers brought their daughters to Rooted Wellness, saying, "I want her to meet you. I want her to know what strength looks like." Marie was humbled. She had never dreamed of fame. All she ever wanted was to help people feel seen. But something inside her said, now is the time to do more. One evening, she sat in her small office, a notebook open in front of her. She had written a single question on the page. How can I lift others the way I needed someone to lift me? And slowly, her next idea began to bloom. She called it the Rising Roots Program. It would be a training and support program for women, especially women of color, single mothers, and those who had been rejected or ignored by society. Not just business training, not just money advice, but confidence building, public speaking, wellness care, and support circles. She wanted women to know their worth before they ever stepped into a bank or business office. She wanted them to walk in knowing they had power, even if no one else saw it yet. Marie shared the idea with her team and volunteers. They didn't just like it. They loved it. Within weeks, her small clinic had added a new room. Once a quiet storage space, now filled with chairs, plants, and a whiteboard. The first group of women arrived looking nervous. Some held babies, some wore old clothes, some didn't speak much at all. But Marie greeted each one with a hug and the same gentle words. You belong here. The weeks went by. The room filled with laughter, tears, and stories. One woman, Lena, shared how she was always told she wasn't smart enough to start a bakery. Marie helped her write her first business plan. Another woman, Clara, had been homeless for a year. With Marie's help, she found a job and started saving. At the end of the 12-week program, they held a small celebration. Each woman shared her dream and her next step. Marie watched from the back, eyes full of pride, heart full of love. She didn't just change lives. She was multiplying hope. One evening, as Marie locked up the clinic, she heard footsteps behind her. It was Lena, holding a small paper box. I made these for you, Lena smiled. My first real batch from my bakery kitchen. Marie opened the box. Inside were 4 beautifully decorated cupcakes with words written in soft icing. You saw me. Marie's throat tightened. Her hands shook a little. In that quiet moment, she realized something. All those days she had spent feeling invisible, all the pain she carried from being judged, laughed at, pushed aside, it hadn't been wasted. Because now, she could see others more clearly than anyone else could. She had become what she once needed. And that was power. It had been nearly 3 years since Marie walked into that bank and was laughed at. Now she stood in her clinic's community room, surrounded by women she had trained, mentored, and lifted. The Rising Roots program had helped over 200 women start new paths in life. Some opened businesses, some returned to school, and some simply found the strength to believe in themselves again. Mary should have felt proud, and she did. But something inside her told her the journey wasn't over. Then, one rainy afternoon, a letter arrived. It came in a clean white envelope. The paper was thick, the writing sharp and formal. Mary opened it slowly and read, "Dear Ms. Murray Johnson, we would be honored to invite you to serve as a board member of the National Bank Diversity Council. Your story, leadership, and impact have inspired change across the country. We believe your voice can help shape the future of fair banking and financial justice." Marie read it twice. The same kind of bank that once treated her like she didn't belong was now asking her to help lead change from the top. Her heart beat fast. She walked to her window and stared out at the gray sky, filled with memory. She didn't need revenge. She never wanted power just to sit in a chair at a big table. But this was different. This was her chance to open real doors. Marie accepted the offer, but only under one condition. She would speak honestly, she would speak for the unheard, and she would not sit quietly just to be accepted. And they agreed. Months later, Marie sat in a grand meeting room, surrounded by executives and experts. Her hair was tied back neatly, her voice calm, but strong. As people around the table talked about numbers and reports, Marie raised her hand and said softly, "Let me tell you what it feels like to be judged at the door." And they listened. Because now, her story wasn't just personal. It was policy. It was leadership. It was truth with power. Back at Rooted Wellness, things continued to grow. New programs were added. The small clinic was becoming a full community center. One evening, a young girl came in with her mother. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Her eyes were wide as she looked around at the books, the plants, the calm faces. Marie knelt down to meet her eyes. "Hi," she smiled. "What's your name?" The girl whispered, "Grace." Marie's breath caught for a moment. She remembered her mother's necklace. She remembered her first visit to the bank. She remembered every step, every tear, every small win. And now she was looking into the eyes of the future. Marie smiled and gently said, "Grace, I'm so glad you're here." Marie's journey had come full circle. She didn't just return as the boss of her own life. She returned as a builder of dreams, a protector of hope, and a voice for the forgotten. She proved that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is rise quietly and lift others as you go.